First contact and defiance. The UES Intrepid drifted silently through the void, its massive frame graceful despite its imposing presence. Captain Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. Her dark eyes reflected the stars beyond the viewscreen as she contemplated their mission. The first human vessel to venture this far into uncharted space, using the newly perfected quantum fold drive. "Status report, Commander Chen," she said, her voice steady and calm. Commander David Chen reviewed his console before responding. "All systems nominal, Captain. Quantum fold drive cooling after the jump. We're approximately 12,000 light-years from Earth, farther than any human has ever traveled. And completely alone," muttered Lieutenant Amara Okafor, the tactical officer. Her fingers danced across her console, constantly scanning for potential threats. Elena nodded slightly. "That was always the plan, Lieutenant. We're pathfinders." She turned to the science station. "Dr. Volkov, what can you tell me about our current location?" Dr. Sonia Volkov, the ship's senior xenoscientist, examined the stream of data flowing across her screens. "Fascinating readings, Captain. We appear to be in a densely populated sector. I'm detecting artificial signals from multiple star systems within scanning range. This region of space is bustling with activity." Elena raised an eyebrow. "First contact scenarios are now in effect. Communications, passive monitoring only. Let's listen before we speak." For 3 days, the Intrepid maintained position at the edge of the system, cataloging transmissions and attempting to decipher alien languages. The ship's quantum processors worked tirelessly, gradually building translation matrices for what appeared to be dozens of distinct species, all communicating across a vast interstellar network. On the 4th day, Dr. Volkov called an emergency briefing. "They call themselves the Galactic Concordance," she explained, displaying a holographic map of the sector. "From what we've deciphered, it's an empire spanning nearly 1,000 star systems, comprised of approximately 46 species. However, they appear to be dominated by a single species, the K-Ver." The hologram shifted to display a towering insectoid being with 4 arms and an exoskeleton that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. "The K-Ver rule through technological superiority and overwhelming military force," continued Dr. Volkov. "They've conquered or assimilated every civilization they've encountered for the past 3 millennia. Their philosophy appears to be one of manifest destiny. They believe it is their right to rule all intelligent life." Commander Chen frowned. "And we just quantum folded right into their backyard. More concerning," added Chief Engineer Raj Patel, "is their level of technological development. Most of their ships use some form of faster-than-light travel, but nothing as advanced as our quantum fold drive. If they detected our entry into this sector—" "They did," interrupted Lieutenant Okafor, her console suddenly flashing with alerts. "Captain, multiple vessels approaching at high speed. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures suggest they're warships." Elena straightened her uniform jacket. "Yellow alert. Shields up, but weapons remain powered down. Let's not appear hostile." She turned to Communications Officer Wang. "Prepare to broadcast a first contact greeting on all frequencies we've identified. Standard protocol." The approaching vessels slowed as they entered visual range. Sleek, chitinous ships that resembled their creators, with forward sections that mimicked the head of a K-Ver and multiple appendage-like structures extending from the central hull. "They're scanning us," reported Commander Chen. "Extensive scans. They seem particularly interested in our propulsion system." "We're receiving a transmission," Officer Guang announced. "Translating now." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a K-Ver adorned in metallic armor that accentuated its exoskeleton. Its compound eyes seemed to glitter with cold calculation. "Unknown vessel," came the translated voice, each word precise and laden with authority. "I am Executor Vexcal of the Galactic Concordance. You have entered Concordance space without authorization. Identify yourself and submit to immediate inspection." Helena stepped forward. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the United Earth ship Intrepid. We are explorers from a civilization beyond your known space. We come in peace and apologize for our unannounced arrival. We were unaware this region was claimed territory." The Keyvare's mandibles clicked in what the crew would later learn was an expression of surprise or disbelief. "Earth? This designation is not in our records. All spacefaring civilizations within 50,000 light-years are documented in the Concordance archives." The executor's posture stiffened. "Your vessel's technology registers as anomalous. You will power down your systems and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with force." Elena's expression remained diplomatic, but her voice carried steel. "Executor Vexcal, while we respect your authority in this region, we cannot allow boarding without proper diplomatic protocols. Perhaps we could establish communication channels and arrange for a formal delegation instead." The executor's bioluminescent patterns flashed in patterns that the translation software couldn't interpret. "Your vessel appears to use technology beyond what should be possible for an unknown species. This suggests theft or deception. We do not negotiate with potential threats. This is your final warning." The transmission cut abruptly. "They're charging weapons," Lieutenant Okafor announced, tension evident in her voice. "Red alert," Elena ordered calmly. "Engage adaptive shielding. Tactical analysis of their weapons capabilities, Lieutenant. Energy-based weapons, Captain. Similar to our phase cannons but less refined. Their targeting systems are impressive, though." The first salvos from the Keyvare vessels streaked across space. Brilliant green energy beams that struck the Intrepid's shields with considerable force. The bridge crew braced for impact, but the expected shudder never came. "Shields holding at 98%, reported Commander Chen with barely contained amazement. "The adaptive matrix is already compensating for their weapon frequencies." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "The advantages of being underestimated, Commander. Let's not squander it." The Keyvare ships fired again, this time with more concentrated barrages. Again, the Intrepid shields absorbed the assault with minimal degradation. "They're hailing us again," Officer Huang announced. Executor Vexcal's image appeared once more, his compound eyes now pulsing with what might have been anger or alarm. "Your defensive capabilities are unexpected. Perhaps negotiations are warranted after all." "I'm glad you've reconsidered, Executor," Elena replied evenly. "As I said, we come in peace. Peace requires trust, Captain, and you represent an unknown quantity. A dangerous one." The executor paused, mandibles working. "You will follow our escort to Outpost Drenthal, where proper assessments can be conducted. From there, diplomatic channels may be established, if your intentions prove genuine." Before Elena could respond, Dr. Volkov whispered urgently, "Captain, I've analyzed their communication patterns during this exchange. They're stalling. I'm detecting multiple encrypted transmissions to distant coordinates." Commander Chen confirmed this with a grim nod. "Long-range scans show numerous vessels converging on our position, much larger than these escorts." Elena understood immediately. "They're calling for reinforcements." She addressed the view screen again. "Executor, we appreciate your offer, but we'll need assurances of our ship's autonomy and crew's safety before proceeding to your outpost." "You misunderstand, Captain," Vexcal replied, all pretense of diplomacy vanishing. "This was not an invitation. Either you comply, or when our battle group arrives, your impressive shields will be tested against the full might of the Concordance." The transmission ended abruptly. "Options," Elena said, turning to her senior staff. Chief Engineer Patel spoke first. "The quantum fold drive needs at least 16 hours to recharge after our jump. We can't simply leave. And if we did," added Commander Chen, "we'd only be postponing the inevitable confrontation. They now know humans exist and have technology they want." Lieutenant Okafor frowned at her tactical display. "Based on their approaching forces, We're looking at odds of approximately 30 to 1 within the hour. Elena paced the bridge briefly, considering their limited choices. Dr. Volkov, how much have you learned about their communication protocols? The scientist straightened. Enough to understand their basic command structure and tactical signals, Captain. Their encryption is advanced but not impenetrable to our systems. A plan began to form in Elena's mind. Commander Chen, how many combat drones do we have operational? All 24, Captain. And our adaptive countermeasure systems. Lieutenant Okafor caught on immediately. Fully functional. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking. Elena nodded. We're outnumbered but not outmatched. The Concordance believes they're dealing with a cornered animal. Let's show them they're actually facing humanity's finest. She looked around at her crew, pride evident in her expression. Prepare for combat operations. We're about to give the Cave Vare a lesson in human ingenuity. As the first wave of the Concordance battle group appeared on long-range sensors, the Intrepid's crew worked feverishly to implement their captain's daring strategy. They were alone, vastly outnumbered, and facing an empire that had never known defeat. But they were also human, adaptable, resourceful, and unwilling to surrender without a fight. The battle for humanity's first impression on the galactic stage was about to begin. Final confrontation. The Concordance battle group emerged from sublight travel in perfect formation. 36 warships arranged in a three-dimensional sphere around the Intrepid's position, eliminating any potential escape vector. At the center of the formation loomed the imposing silhouette of the Executor's command vessel, nearly 4 times the size of the human ship. Quite the welcoming committee, murmured Commander Chen as the tactical display catalogued each enemy vessel. Captain Rice stood resolute. They want to intimidate us with a show of force. Let them think it's working. She turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Huang, open a channel to the Executor's ship. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing not Executor Vexcal, but a different Cave. This one's exoskeleton bore elaborate markings of deep crimson and gold, with cybernetic enhancements visible around its compound eyes. I am Supreme Commander Drexnell of the Concordance Expeditionary Force, the alien announced without preamble. Your presence has been deemed a potential threat to Concordance security. You will power down all systems immediately and prepare for boarding or be destroyed. Elena stepped forward, making sure her uniform and posture projected calm authority. Supreme Commander, I am Captain Elena Reyes of Earth. We've demonstrated no hostile intent, yet you surround us with a battle fleet. This seems disproportionate for first contact protocols. The Supreme Commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. Protocol is determined by the Concordance, not by unknown entities with anomalous technology. Your shields withstood weapons that would have crippled any known vessel of your size. This capability alone justifies our response. So you fear what you don't understand. Elena replied evenly. That's unfortunate. Humanity has always believed first contact should begin with dialogue, not threats. Your opinions on diplomacy are irrelevant. Drexnall dismissed. You have 3 of your minutes to comply with our demands. The transmission ended abruptly. Well, that went about as expected, Elena said, turning to her crew. Status of our preparations. Lieutenant Okafor reported from Tactical. Combat drones programmed and ready for deployment. Electronic warfare suite primed with the algorithms Dr. Volkov developed based on their communication patterns. Engineering reports ready, Captain, added Commander Chen. Targeted electromagnetic pulse generators charged at 100%. Shield modulators reconfigured as specified. Elena nodded. Dr. Volkov, final assessment of their tactical vulnerabilities. The scientist looked up from her station. Their ships appear to rely heavily on a synchronized targeting network, each vessel sharing targeting data with the entire group. Efficient, but potentially vulnerable to the right kind of interference. Additionally, their shields operate on predictable frequency patterns. Once disrupted, they require approximately 8.6 seconds to reestablish equilibrium. 8.6 seconds is an eternity in combat, Elena noted. She checked the countdown timer. Less than a minute remained before the Concordance's deadline expired. Stations, everyone. Lieutenant Okafor, deploy countermeasures on my mark. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each person focused on their tasks despite the overwhelming odds facing them. The Intrepid, though advanced by Earth standards, was still just one ship against an armada. They're charging weapons across all vessels, Commander Chen reported as the timer reached 0. Multiple targeting locks detected. Evasive pattern Delta. Elena ordered calmly. Deploy drones and initiate electronic countermeasures. Now. The Intrepid suddenly unleashed 24 sleek combat drones from concealed bays along its hull. Simultaneously, the ship's advanced electronic warfare systems activated, broadcasting precisely calibrated interference patterns across the frequencies that Dr. Volkov had identified as vital to the Concordance battle network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfectly synchronized first volley from the Concordance fleet became chaotic, beams of energy crisscrossing space, some missing the Intrepid entirely, others striking at angles that the adaptive shields easily deflected. Their targeting network is experiencing cascade failures, reported Lieutenant Okafor with barely contained excitement. Drone deployment successful, all units operational and executing programmed maneuvers. The human combat drones, small and agile, were now weaving between the massive Concordance warships. Though not heavily armed themselves, they were broadcasting the same shield frequency as the Intrepid, creating multiple false targets that the confused Concordance targeting systems couldn't distinguish from the actual ship. Phase 2, Elena commanded. Chief Engineer Patil activated the ship's specialized electromagnetic pulse generators, not broad-spectrum EMPs that might damage the Intrepid's own systems, but precisely calibrated pulses designed to interfere with the specific frequencies used by KVER technology. 3 of the nearest Concordance vessels suddenly drifted out of formation, their main systems temporarily disabled. Supreme Commander Drex Nal is hailing us, Lieutenant Huang announced. Ignore it, Elena replied. Continue executing the battle plan. Weapons free, Lieutenant Okafor. Target their propulsion systems only. For the first time, the Intrepid's own weapons came online. Advanced phase cannons that fired concentrated bursts of energy at precisely calculated points on the Concordance vessels. Unlike the KVER's brute force approach, the human weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling engines without causing catastrophic damage. 5 enemy vessels disabled, reported Commander Chen. Wait. They're adapting their communications to a different frequency. Our jamming effectiveness is decreasing. Elena had anticipated this. Shift to contingency pattern Bravo. Dr. Volkov. The scientist was already inputting new parameters, recalibrating our electronic warfare suite. Their adaptive algorithms are impressive, but predictable in their patterns. The battle continued to evolve, with the Concordance forces gradually recovering from their initial disarray. The Supreme Commander's massive flagship began moving toward the Intrepid, its weapons cutting through space with increasing accuracy. Direct hit on sections 12 through 15. Commander Chen announced as the ship shuddered for the first time. Shields at 72% and holding, but they're beginning to find the resonant frequencies. Elena studied the tactical display. Despite their initial success, the sheer number of Concordance vessels was beginning to tell. The human drones, though effective as decoys, were being systematically targeted and destroyed. The electronic countermeasures were becoming less effective as the KVER adapted. It was time for their final gambit. Execute Sunburst, Elena ordered. Chief Engineer Patel nodded grimly and activated a sequence on his console. Quantum field destabilizers online. Calculating safe distance parameters. The Intrepid suddenly accelerated at full impulse power, driving straight toward the heart of the Concordance formation, directly at the Supreme Commander's flagship. The maneuver was so unexpected that several KVER vessels actually broke formation to avoid collision. They think we're attempting a suicide run, Lieutenant Okafor observed. Let them think that, Elena replied. Distance to optimal deployment point. 30 seconds, Captain, Commander Chen counted down. 20, 10, 5. Mark. Deploy Sunburst and execute emergency fold maneuver, Elena commanded. For a brief moment, the Intrepid's engineering section glowed with an otherworldly light as it channeled energy directly from the quantum fold drive, not to jump through space, but to create a localized quantum field disruption. Unlike conventional weapons, this wasn't designed to destroy, but to temporarily distort the very fabric of space-time in a controlled bubble. The effect was visually spectacular. A sphere of shimmering golden energy expanded rapidly from the Intrepid's position, engulfing the nearby Concordance vessels. Within this field, the laws of physics briefly fluctuated, causing the aliens' energy weapons to disperse harmlessly and their navigation systems to report impossible spatial coordinates. In the confusion, the Intrepid executed a microfold jump, not the full interstellar jump the drive was designed for, but enough to instantly reposition the ship behind the Concordance flagship. Target their primary command center, Elena ordered. Precision strike only. Lieutenant Okafor fired the phase cannons with unerring accuracy, striking the nerve center of the flagship's operations. The massive vessel's lights flickered but remained operational. The damage was strategic rather than catastrophic. Open a channel, Elena said, straightening her uniform. All frequencies. When the communication system activated, the bridge crew could see the chaos they'd created on the Concordance flagship. Emergency lighting, officers rushing to restore systems, and Supreme Commander Drex now staring in disbelief at the human captain who had outmaneuvered his entire battle group. Supreme Commander, Elena began, her voice firm but not triumphant. We could continue this engagement, but I see no purpose in further destruction. Your fleet remains mostly intact, as does mine. However, I believe we've demonstrated that technology alone doesn't determine the outcome of conflict. Ingenuity, adaptability, and restraint are equally important factors. The Key-Ver commander's compound eyes studied her for a long moment before he responded. You disabled our command center rather than destroying it, when you had the opportunity. Elena nodded. As I stated from the beginning, humanity does not seek conflict. We defend ourselves when necessary, but our preference is always peaceful cooperation. Drexnell's mandibles worked silently for several moments, conferring with officers off-screen. Finally, he turned back to face Elena. In 3,000 years of Concordance expansion, no species has ever achieved what your single vessel has accomplished today. There was something new in his tone, not quite respect, but perhaps the beginning of it. You have earned the right to speak, Captain Elena Reyes of Earth. The Concordance will listen. The tension on the Intrepid's bridge eased slightly. This wasn't peace, not yet, but it was an opening. Then let us begin again, Supreme Commander, Elena replied. Not as conqueror and subject, but as representatives of civilizations with much to learn from each other. As negotiations began in earnest, the crew of the Intrepid knew they had accomplished something profound. A single human ship, through courage and innovation, had changed humanity's first impression on the galactic stage from that of a curiosity to be conquered into a power to be respected. The shadow of Terra had stretched across the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.